Love Under the Stars is quite a sweet Hallmark film. It definitely got a little bit emotional at times, also a little bit strange with regards to the basic premise, but it does work. This was released in 2015. It's directed by Terry Ingram, and it's written by Erik Patterson and Jessica Scott, and we have a cast including Wes Brown, Ashley Newbrough, and Jaeda Lily Miller. And Becca is a psychology major, and she doesn't really know what to do her thesis on, so her professor, played by Barry Bostwick, suggests that she spends time with this class of young children. And she meets this little girl called Emily. And Emily has recently lost her mother. And she's displaying some, I don't want to say necessarily interesting behaviours, but she's certainly a character, put it that way, and could potentially be somebody that Becca might want to write about, focus on for her thesis. And she spends time with her, and Emily asks her father, and this is the bit that I thought was a bit strange. Emily asks her father if her new friend Becca can come for a play date. Her father, Nate, doesn't realise Becca's a fully grown adult, and he says yes. And Emily asks Becca if she wants to go for a play date. She says yes, and they agree to meet at a certain place at a certain time, and I feel like that's just absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, a little bit concerning that a fully grown adult will say, let's meet at this place at this time to a young child without ever communicating with the child's parent. So, unrealistic, hopefully unrealistic. And the basic premise itself is a bit bizarre. I don't think it's the most well thought out, but I'd say once we get over the first few hurdles, it goes quite smoothly. Becca meets Nate. There's, of course, the classic Hallmark romantic aspect there. And Becca spends time with Emily as we get to know both characters through each other's eyes, which works quite well, actually. And there are some similarities in their experiences, and I don't want to go into too much detail about that. But I thought, as characters, Becca and Emily worked well together. And in fact, there are many, many Hallmark films and non-Hallmark films where we have a female protagonist who meets a male protagonist. It's usually the adults meet and the child is secondary. It's very unusual for the adult to meet the child and then they meet the father. It does happen, but not that frequently. But the point I'm not succinctly trying to make is that there are many Hallmark and other films where a female protagonist meets a young girl and they bond and they get along. But this one seems to have the strongest bond and the strongest relationship between female adult and young child in any of the Hallmark films I've seen. Very well written, very well done. It helps that Becca is quite childlike in a lot of ways. And Nate is a very likeable protagonist as well. I think everybody gets on really well. That's not to say there aren't obstacles. Most of the obstacles are emotional, but everything's generally well written. I do think the basic premise needed a bit of work to be more believable and less creepy. But that aside, it's a good story. The characters are well written. The performances are very good. And after the first few awkward moments, I thought Love Under the Stars was a pretty decent film. And if it sounds like a story that might appeal to you, if you're a fan of Hallmark films or this kind of film in general, then needless to say, I'm very happy to recommend Love Under the Stars.